Hello and welcome to this edition of Piedmont Business Live. I'm your host, Ken Morrison, and today we are talking to Brad Harmon, who is the president of Syntech. Brad, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me first, what is Syntech?
Syntech is an architectural sign manufacturing company. My family started this business in 1992. With the premise of manufacturing ADA compliant signage. That's the signs with Braille that you would see in any public facility. And through the years, we've gotten ourselves involved in just about every aspect of the sign business. But as such, we realize there's some areas of the industry that just don't suit our capabilities. So we've maintained a focus on building interiors. It's a little bit more of a specialized niche within our market.
And with ADA signs, now for somebody like me, it never occurred to me that signage had to be compliant with the ADA. So tell me about that. What sort of things do you have to do to be compliant with ADA?
ADA signs require, obviously, I mentioned Braille. Grade 2 Braille is obviously for the visually impaired, but also requires very specific character heights for the lettering, the wording. It also requires, in some cases, pictograms or images. For example, a restroom that would have to that would designate what that particular room has. The signage also has very specific needs in terms of finish, contrast of color. It has to be a non-glare finish. You don't want it shining like a mirror. Right. So it has to be more of a matte finish.
All these for visually impaired?
Every bit of this is for the visually impaired or handicapped. There are specific height requirements. The signs need to be within a field of 48 inches to 60 inches from the floor to the top of the sign, or to where the Braille is located. This is, again, for those that are wheelchair bound. They have access and reach, but it also maintains consistency in placement, the locations for the signage. I mean, frankly, we all know that anyone visually impaired or handicapped is going to most likely be escorted, but the federal government came up with these rules and guidelines that, along with the ADA as a whole, in the construction documents and how buildings are to be built. And this is just to maximize accessibility.
Yeah. And I guess we should mention ADA is Americans with Disabilities
Act.
Yes,
that's probably a good idea. It is Americans with Disabilities Act. It was written in 1990 and brought into law in 1991. There have been a few updates through the years, the most recent being in 2010. There were just some minor revisions in the code, again, pertaining to the copy, the heights, the placement of the signs. But again, those changes were somewhat minor. In some respects, the 2010 code also allowed a little bit more of an opportunity for designers to have some creative freedoms. You have the option of having a tactile character that is the same color as the background, but then also the opportunity to do a high contrast visual image of the same wording or lettering with a little bit more creative opportunity for whether it's letter style, font, etc.
Okay. Now, are there a lot of sign companies out there that specialize in ADA, or is this a smaller niche within the sign?
This is actually a smaller niche. There are approximately 30,000 companies, sign companies in North America.
Wow.
less than 10% of those companies actually produce ADA signage, and an even smaller percentage really specialize and focus on exclusively manufacturing ADA signs. So it's a very tight niche. Thereby, it allows us to really drill down to what our core capabilities are and to maximize those opportunities.
And then be considered a leading expert in that industry.
Exactly, exactly.
So tell me a little bit about the founding of the company. It's a family business, correct?
It is a family business. My father started the company in 1992. I believe it was September of 92, so we're on our 23rd year. The funny thing was the idea was to manufacture plaques and trophies and get into the awards business. Both of us played racquetball professionally and traveled the United States and had a lot of contacts throughout the country. However, as he was researching the equipment and what would be needed to produce those awards, he had a friend at UNC, Chapel Hill, that turned him on to the ADA. And very quickly realized that this was a golden opportunity. What better salesperson to have than the federal government saying you got to have these signs?
Right.
So
that's good. Now, what about your recent growth?
Recent growth has been interesting. Our growth actually expanded exponentially beginning just before the recession. And we continue to grow by double-digit percentages throughout that entire span of the recession. And the reason being is we began to turn our focus more exclusively to being a wholesale industry supplier versus focusing on just the retail market. Being still a very small business, it was easier to channel our resources toward doing what we do best and expanding our market through our contacts within the industry rather than trying to basically beat doors down for new projects here on a local level.
And so what's the difference between your company and the traditional sign company? And then also tell me about the term architectural that we see in your logo.
The difference is we're not going to necessarily be able to provide everything for everybody. We, again, focusing on a niche part of the industry, we're not your typical banner shop. We're not the mom and pop around the corner that can or that really is going to pursue the cookie cutter signs or advertising signs. The architectural is really speaking to more of a higher end, a higher level within the industry, in that we work in dimension, we work in depths, we work with unique materials. It's not just a banner or a metal sign in a real estate frame. It's more about creating a brand that speaks not only to the building and the built environment, but it also speaks to the company's process, the company's mantra, if you will.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I noticed on your website I saw a lot of examples of your signage, and I was impressed to see that it wasn't just functional signage, but also very attractive signage, incorporating designs, colors, shapes. It looked like that you guys are extremely versatile in that.
We are. The sky's the limit when it comes to color and style. Yes, you have the basic components of an ADA sign to follow those guidelines and to make sure that you are compliant. But special elements, whether it be a decorative border, or whether it maybe be a side element, maybe an aluminum bar, something to create more pleasurable visual experience versus just your standard cookie cutter blue and white sign that you might see walking down within a government building.
So tell me what's new in the architectural signage industry, and what are you guys doing to stay competitive in that industry?
One of the newest things that has come on within the last, say, 18 months or so is a new process called thermoforming. It's a process to where we can manufacture a truly one-piece sign. So the raised characters, the braille, everything is a single-piece construction. Now, there are other processes that are out there that they tout them to be single-piece construction, but this truly is single-piece construction. It is not a laminated material. For thermoforming, there are only 20 sign companies in North America currently that produce thermoform signs, and we're one of those companies. So we're kind of stepped out and moved toward a cutting edge process. And I wouldn't say we're perfect at it. We're human. We make mistakes every single solitary day, but we're learning from those and are learning to work with additional materials to create new opportunities and new elements that we can bring to the forefront from a design standpoint.
So what's the advantage of the thermoforming, of using that material?
It's harder to be defaced. It's harder to be vandalized. If a sign, anybody can vandalize a sign. I mean, let's face it. But the typical traditional ADA signage that we produce probably still the most of is actually applied. It's a couple of different pieces of material put together. Whereas with and those pieces can be pulled apart. And with thermoforming, there's nothing to pull apart. It's truly one piece. That main body that has all those characters in braille, you can't pull it apart.
Nice. So a big advantage for those using those signs.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other advantage too is that it's completely impervious to the weather, the elements. There are some other processes, in fact one called photopolymer, which we also manufacture. It can, if it's not handled properly, or just if it's the right materials are not used for an exterior environment, it will come apart, it will erode over time, whereas this won't.
In a previous conversation you and I had, you mentioned that part of your company's philosophy is to turn your customers into raving fans, which is excellent. So what are some of the things that your company does to achieve that?
It's more about truly listening to your customer, not just hearing what they have to say, but truly listening to them and making sure that you're offering them every opportunity, whether it's giving them options of here's a value option, here's what you asked for, and here's another opportunity to maybe upsell your client. We look to become, instead of just a vendor, we look to become a partner in their business to help them succeed. And if that means that we need to work with them from a design standpoint or help by collaborating on the design, or maybe working with them on different material use options to help best implement what their client is ultimately looking for. There's not many companies out there in our business that are truly doing that. It's a matter of listening to that client and really taking their interest at heart. And at the end of the day, under-promise and overproduce.
And that's, I'm sure, why your company, in spite of the recession, continued to see such incredible growth.
Exactly. It allowed us to jump in and grab some market share from some of the other companies out there that were just just in it just to produce it and move on to the next job. We would rather make sure that we have gone above and beyond the basic requirements set forth by our customers.
One last question. What do you see in the future for Syntech?
I see new opportunities in the design aspect. I see new opportunities to work as a higher level design partner with our clients. I also see the chance to bring in more of a technological aspect to our signage, whether that be through video or through a digital aspect to the signage. One of the things that my father initially worked on many years ago, and we're still toying around with it, is to have a way to add a voice message. So if the person runs their hand across the sign, you get a recording of, hey, this is the men's restroom. You know, playing with harnessing the new technology that comes about every single solitary day is certainly something that I see us being able to continue to implement going forward.
Nice. Brad, thank you very much for sharing your time with us today and for telling us about the success of Syntech, and we wish you great success in the future.
Very good. Thank you.
If you'd like to learn more about Syntech, please visit the website. It's at the end of this video and also at the bottom of this page. We thank you for tuning in to Piedmont Business Live, and we'll see you next time.